So here we are with another tier list. If you guys saw my last tier list last month, that was the first tier list I've done on YouTube, and it is not going to be the last. But last week, I put up a poll on my YouTube page asking which tier list you guys wanted to see next, because I was dry on ideas. And people wanted to see Frontier more than a redone Sunbreak tier list, so that is what we are going to do. Here I have a lot of Frontier monsters. I'm not going to scroll down just yet, but I have in total about 46 Frontier monsters. Some of them are paired because I couldn't get them together, so some of them are going to be ranked about the same, and they're all grouped together. But for the most part, it is going to be very seamless. This is once again going to go in alphabetical order, and I have actually never played Monster Hunter Frontier. However, I have watched Josh and Cotton from Rage Gaming Videos play through Frontier, and that is how I gathered up as much knowledge as I have, which admittedly is not a whole lot. But the knowledge that I have for this tier list is basically just me watching their little series on Monster Hunter Frontier. And I'm going to be ranking these monsters based on how much potential I think they have if they are to be brought back into the main series. So what exactly does that mean? Well, all of these monsters down here are exclusive only to Monster Hunter Frontier. Some monsters from Frontier have been brought into the main series in the past. However, not everyone has been. So, just to clarify on the monsters that I have decided to go ahead and add in, the only monsters that are not on this list are subspecies of the monsters on the list, any rare species also not on the list, and then in addition to that, the extreme individuals also not here, Zenith monsters not here, and then the other monsters that have been included are the three monsters that are currently in the main series. So Hypnocatrice, Levasioth, and Espiness are not on this list because they already are in the main series, and that's that. However, burst species as well as exotic species are actually going to be featured on this list because I think they're different enough to justify actually putting them there. So, once again, I'm going to be going over what I know about these monsters, which admittedly is not very much. This is going to be a very open-ended list. I'm probably not going to be able to take this one super seriously, and I don't think you should either. But yeah, that's basically what I'm dealing with here. This is not going to be perfect, nor do I really intend it to be. So this is really up for interpretation, and if there's something that I missed, which is extremely likely because my tier lists are never going to be scripted, then don't be afraid to let me know. But as you can see, we got 6 tiers. We have S, please bring back now. A, just about perfect. B, minor changes needed. C, not sure. D, likely won't work. And then we have F, don't ever bring back. There's not going to be a whole lot in D or F especially. A lot of it's going to be up here in these top 4. But just be prepared for some monsters to go into F or D tier because of either they just will not work in the main series for one reason or another, or I just would get severe PTSD from them because of another monster that already exists in the main series. So, once again, the list is alphabetical. I am not going to be able to provide example footage in this episode like I did last time, because once again, I like to grab my own footage. I don't like using other people's footage. So I have no footage of Monster Hunter Frontier at the time, so I'm not going to go and get some. So you're just going to have to sit here and watch me talk here, and that's going to be about it. There's not really any example footage that I can provide, so I'm going to do the best with what I can. But with that out of the way, let's not waste too much time because my last tier list had a 5-minute intro, nearly 6 minutes in fact. So let's go ahead and get started with Abirugu. And Abirugu is a bit of a tough one to rank first up because Abirugu is remarkably similar to another monster that already exists in the main series, and that monster is Glavenus. Glavenus is one of the most famous monsters in the series because he was a part of the Fated Four when Monster Hunter Generations came out. So he was a very important monster for the time, and what Glavenus was known for was him being able to use his tail as a greatsword, but also not just that, but he was also a fire monster, and he could even light his tail on fire and turn it into the 1,000-degree knife that I would never have gotten behind. So Glavenus is a really cool monster by himself, despite being a fire monster. I don't mean to be joking around too much in this video. But Abirugu is remarkably similar, and in fact, Abirugu actually came first, because Monster Hunter Frontier came out a long time before Monster Hunter Generations. So, I can't exactly say that Abirugu is necessarily copying Glavenus, but because more people know about Glavenus, they're probably going to look at Abirugu and be like, oh, okay, they just copied and pasted Glavenus, so what is there to really like here? And to that I say, this is probably going to be a bit more of a subjective choice, but there is one thing that is really good in the favor of Abirugu, and that is his subspecies, Giarugu. I would have to say that Giarugu, if you combine him alongside Abirugu, because this is something I actually did not mention, I also wanted to go ahead and group in the subspecies with the monsters just to kind of judge them collectively. When you put Abirugu next to Giarugu, he actually ends up being, I'm gonna say a worthy B tier monster. I can't necessarily say that Abirugu is the best monster for the series, because once again he's very similar to Glavenus. But at the same time, this similarity could lead to a pretty interesting turf war between him and Glavenus. However, just because of his similarities, I don't think he really would work. I think he's definitely going to need some changes made to better distinguish him from Glavenus. Giarugu, on the other hand, can definitely help out with this. It'll be a little weird to put just Giarugu in the game and not Abirugu. I wouldn't be entirely opposed to this, but some people who have played Frontier a lot more than I have, which is everyone, well, some people might find it a little bit weird, so I think some minor changes could be made to Abirugu, and that'll be that. Alright, next up we have Akur Vishimu, and this is probably one of the more famous monsters in Frontier, based on what I hear from the community, because back in around the time when even like Sunbreak was released, I just kind of kept thinking about Akur Vishimu, but at the same time, this might not actually be the community's doing it. It might just be a me thing, because recently I kind of found out that my perception on what the community thinks may be a little bit twisted. But I do think that Akur Vishimu actually would be very interesting. In fact, I'm actually going to go ahead and put it up in A tier, because I actually do think that Akur Vishimu could definitely work. Except for one problem, and that's the reason why he's not an S. And I'm not just going to hand out S tier. I'm going to do my best to not do that. Akur Vishimu has one change that needs to be made, and that is to the crystal debuff. It needs to be toned down. Because what the crystal debuff does is it not only combines the effects of the stench debuff, which prevents you from using items, it also adds that onto blast, which means you will explode after a while, but to essentially throw another wrench into the works, and to completely screw you over, it also reduces you to a single bar of stamina, so you can't even roll to get it off. So the only way to get it off is to have someone hit you, which is not usually the most viable thing, and if you're playing solo, you can't do this. So the crystal debuff needs to be toned down a little bit. I'm not entirely against a debuff like this, but it has to be changed for the better, just to make sure that people do not absolutely hate this monster, because not everyone who has played the main series has also played Frontier. And I am one of those people who have not, as much as I am going to keep bringing this up and probably should not bring it up over and over. But Akur Vishimu, I actually do think could work. Alright, next up we have Anora Patisu, and I think this is another, I think I can justify putting this also in A tier. I can't necessarily say that it's the best monster that could be in the main series, because there's not a whole lot that stands out to him compared to some of the others. But one thing that does stand out is his combination of the dragon and ice elements, and the way that he uses them. Anora Patisu It starts off with just using ice, and in fact, he actually doesn't even start on screen. He actually starts kind of tunneling through the ground towards you, which is honestly kind of scary. But then later into the fight, when he gets really mad, he doesn't just bust out the ice, he also busts out the dragon, which is honestly a little ridiculous. And there's a lot of monsters in Frontier that can be described by, he has that now? You would be surprised at just how many you could describe by, why does he have this attack now? What did I do to deserve this? Because Frontier is a bit of a ridiculous game. Blame the Magna Spike because that threw off the balance. However, I do think Anorkatisu could definitely work out in this case. I can't necessarily say that there's any changes that need to be made. I'm just sticking him in A tier because, like I said, I don't want to just hand out S tier like it's like Reese's or something like that. I think S tier is going to be reserved for monsters that I only think actually deserve S tier, which is not going to be anyone. In fact, there's going to be quite a few monsters that are going to fall just short of S tier because I genuinely don't think that they actually can justify being in S tier. Anyway, so another thing to note is that not all of these names are localized. In fact, this is actually one of the few monsters that is localized. The Kurashima might be, but this is Baru Ragaru, or if you're going by his localized name, Barlakwal. And one of my friends is not super happy with this monster, and is not going to be very happy with me. But, hello? There you go. I actually do think that it can work. One thing that has kind of bothered me is that there are plenty of monsters that are known as blind cave dwellers, like Giganox and Kezu, but they don't really pass off as threatening because of their designs. Giganox maybe, but Kezu especially, I'm not going to go into the details of that, but let's just say that Kezu has not always passed off the whole creepy atmosphere well. The closest that he gets is just the unsettlingness of his roar, and the fact that it's completely silent whenever you're fighting him. There's no music that plays in the background. Barlagwell, on the other hand, really passes it off. It's this really sickly white color, but it actually works. Got purple stripes, and if you look really closely, you can see a little red stripe going around, and this incredibly long tongue. This monster actually sucks the blood out of its own prey, and it's not just you have to be worried about, you also have to worry about if there are other small monsters in the area. Barlagwal is able to use effectively 4 different kinds of, I'm going to say liquid because it's not all blood, in its veins. It can have just regular water, which is just standard water blight, we all know how that works. It can also drink the blood of an Eoprey to gain poison attacks, a Genprey for paralysis attacks, or your own hunter's blood in order to gain an attack that is actually corrosive to your weapon and will slowly reduce your sharpness. The one thing that I will say that needs to be changed with him, just like with a Kurobashimu, the pin where he starts sucking your blood, it needs to be easier to get out of that pin. Pins have changed drastically thanks to World, so you no longer have to just mash buttons to escape, you sometimes just gotta wait it out. But this one is especially bad. If you don't have full health when you're going into this and you're not mashing as fast as you can, it's very likely that you're going to lose a life from this. And not only does that really badly penalize you, but you also don't get to see exactly what this guy can do, so that can sometimes be a little unfortunate. Either way, apart from that little change, which I'm sure is going to be made, this guy can absolutely work out, and I would be very interested in seeing this, because I think the way that Kezu was done in Rise actually really does justice for him, because he's actually creepy in Rise, especially for some weird reason, Afflicted Kezu, which is unironically and surprisingly one of the hardest fights in the game. But this guy doesn't even need to be afflicted to be scary. This guy is actually pretty terrifying by himself, just because of the ability that he has to suck the blood out of his prey. And I think that actually could work out in this case better than Kezu and Giganox. And I've never fought Giganox, so don't flame me for that, but one day I will. Alright, next up is Barakurosu. And just like with Abirugu, Barakurosu is remarkably similar to a Fated 4 monster, but in this case it is Astalos. Abirugu is a fire-based brute wyvern just like Lavos. Barracurosu is an electric-based flying wyvern, just like Astalos. Except this time, I actually do think that Barracurosu has a better chance of working. I'm not going to put it any higher in A tier. In fact, Barracurosu may actually be the lowest in A tier out of all of these, despite how much I actually kind of like this guy. Once again, just kind of for the same reasons that Abirugu is not any higher. He's too similar to Astalos, but not as similar to Astalos as Abirugu is to Glavenus. Barracurosu actually has quite a few distinctions, and one thing that he actually is also able to do is he even changes his own attack pattern based on the kind of weapon that you bring. So if you bring a really heavy weapon like a hammer or a greatsword, he's going to be a lot harder to hit and very in the air. Meanwhile, if you bring faster weapons, I'm not sure exactly what he does to counter you. However, I do believe that he does something different. I don't know what it is. I did not get a chance to see that. But yeah, I can definitely say that will be pretty interesting to see. Just a monster that actually changes how it fights depending on what weapon you bring. And that's something that could be easily implemented nowadays. So I do think Barracurosu does have a decent chance of making it in, but once again, some changes are going to have to be made to distinguish him from Astalos. But then we also have Gorgirosu, who is basically this guy, but he has Dragon instead of Thunder, which is probably very good. But at the same time, just like with Giarugu, he kind of needs to show up alongside his base species, so he doesn't just feel randomly out of place. Alright, next up is Bogabatarumu, and this, I believe, if I remember correctly, was the last monster to be introduced, but he's also the monster that changes into a Zenith halfway through the fight, which is not inherently a bad thing. However, I do think one thing that can make this a little bit interesting is the fact that, again, halfway through the fight he changes to a Zenith, and this ultimately means that he becomes absolutely ridiculous. And once again, Zenith monsters are not something I included on this list because I didn't really see the need to. However, I think Bogabatarumu is just kind of straying a little close to that when in regards to how ridiculous he is, especially because he has kind of like his own form of blast, which really gives me bad vibes because it could very much be similar to Blast Scourge, which I do not like the Blast Scourge debuff at all. I want to like Brachydio so bad, but Blast Scourge is one of the big things that prevents me from doing that. Same with that stupid hook punch. And Bogabatarumu is giving me kind of sketchy vibes from that. I'm not going to say that's entirely his fault, because I don't think it's going to actually be Blast Scourge. I'm just saying I do not want to see Blast Scourge come back, and I especially do not want to see it on Bogabatarumu. But this guy actually can work. I'm not gonna say right away that this guy's not gonna work, because I actually do have a feeling that he will. He's just gonna need a couple minor changes. Alright, now we're on to Diorekusu, or localized as Diorex. Look, I know I said I didn't really want to hand out S tier, but I'm actually gonna go out on a limb and say Diorex can definitely work in the main series. He's very similar to Tigrex with his fighting style. He's not exactly like Diorex, I must say. However, one thing that is nice is that he kind of has this protective layer of blue electric rocks surrounding him, and his attack pattern is very, very similar to Tigrex, but not exactly the same. It's just different enough so that it's a slightly new learning experience, but at the same time you go into this with the knowledge that he is very much like a Tigrex, and so it actually kind of works a little bit. And honestly, this guy actually seems like it really would be a really fun fight, and just a nice little, even if it doesn't have to be like an actual part of the roster, this could be like a special like cameo quest or something like that. I mean, obviously it doesn't have to be, but this actually could work in some way. I can definitely see that Diorekusu or Diorex can absolutely work in very good ways. So I would love to see this guy come back. All right, our first Elder Dragon on this list, we have the Sophiora, and many people are going to agree. The Sophiora, please, thank you. The Sophiora is gonna be S tier. The Sophiora is the Fatalis of Frontier, the iconic black dragon of Frontier, And while I pretty much have forgotten everything that the Sophiora can do, it's been a very long time since I saw the episode, and I've forgotten most of it since then. What I do know is the fact that if the Sophiora is to appear in the main series, the people are going to absolutely freak out in the best way possible. And I honestly do agree the Sophiora needs a chance. I think that this guy could definitely be, like, if they bring him back into Wilds, this guy could definitely take, like, Fatalis' place, where, like, Fatalis and Elatrion were kind of like the two true final bosses of Iceborne. And then we have Amatsu and Primordial Malzeno being kind of the true final bosses of Sunbreak. The Sophiora, alongside, you can see Arizarion is coming up. I would like to see the Sophiora and Arizarion take the place of Fatalis and Elatrion in the next game. I think a lot of people would like to see that. All right, yet another Elder Dragon. Man, we actually got quite a few of them coming up. We have Dura-Midira. Hold on. Dura-Midira, I believe that's his name. Man, that's hard to pronounce. This one is tough. I can tell a lot of people do like Dura-Midira to an extent. However, Dura-Midira is also one that is kind of at risk of not working. I'm gonna put him in B tier. I think right here in B tier. In between Abiruku and Bogabararumi. I think Dura-Midira can actually work, but it needs to be toned down a lot, because Dura-Midira was one of the most notoriously difficult fights in all of Frontier, and I even heard that people didn't beat him until the Magnet Spike came out. And if that is the case, you can tell you really need to dial back the difficulty a lot. This is just too much. Especially for newcomers, because I bet a lot of people playing Wilds are going to be new to this whole Monster Hunter thing. Unless they play World beforehand, like some of my friends are going to do. But yeah, I can imagine that if people are jumping into the series through Wilds and this guy comes in and is as difficult as he was in Frontier, that's going to be quite a rude awakening, and a lot of people are going to hate him for that. And in that case, I really don't blame them, because they had no way to prepare for this. Not to mention that this guy was also part of an entirely different game mode where you work through a tower full of traps. And another thing is that you have a very limited amount of time to fight this guy. And if you faint against this guy, you don't actually cart, you end up just getting a time penalty, and then you recover, you get back in the fight. I do think that this guy, I do think he can work, but he really needs to be dialed back if he is going to. Alright, Diragawa. I think Diragawa is our first C tier. I'm not sure if Diragawa would work well compared to the 9 other monsters that I've talked about so far. And it's not really his fault, it's just the fact that he doesn't really stand out in any way compared to a lot of the others. He has ice, he has sleep, he has a tail that looks like asparagus. But I think the thing that people know him most for is the silly helmet that Cotton wore for the first almost 20 episodes of Rage's Frontier series, because he just liked it too much and Josh absolutely hated it. I don't think a helmet should be enough to distinguish a monster. Although, I do think he actually can work, but the one reason why I'm just ranking him lower than everything else so far, he just won't stand out in many good ways. Now, the same is not true for our next monster. In fact, with no please grab it. With absolutely no hesitation, I am putting Arizarion in S tier and not looking back. I have honestly wanted to fight Arizarion for a long time, even though I have not had a chance to play Frontier at all. Don't know if I ever will. Don't know if I'll ever get a chance to do that. I so desperately want to fight Arizarion. I want Arizarion to be basically in place of Elatrion, and then the Sophiora in place of Fatalis, of course. But I also heard that Arizarion is the most difficult monster in the entire game of Frontier, especially the Extreme Individual version, which seems like it would be a little bit ridiculous. However, I actually do think that there's a very good chance that this could work, and if that is the case, please bring Arizarion back. I so desperately want to fight it, even though I am going to get my butt handed to me over and over and over again. I want to fight this guy. I want to fight this guy. I want to faint to this guy. I want to experience this guy at least once in my life. Even if it isn't in the main series, I so desperately want to see this guy in person. Like, who else here? Like, who here even thinks about remotely disagreeing with the fact that Aerazarion is something that absolutely should be in the main series? If I had to choose one Elder Dragon, Aerazarion is up there. We haven't had any Frontier Elder Dragons in the main series just yet, but Aerazarion would easily be one of the best. Faranoku! Alright, the electric bird that dances and has a full disco outfit for an armor set. Faranoku is going to go in B tier. And I apologize if it's kind of lagging behind a little bit. Yeah, Faranoku is B tier for me. I think Faranoku does well as kind of like a sort of equivalent to Yankoku, and I do like Yankoku to a degree. I think he's better suited as a variant to Yangaruga, and, well, not a variant, but a counterpart to Yangaruga, and Iceborne really made me love Yangaruga. However, I do think that there is one big issue. This guy is so erratic, and he kind of falls under the same issue of he's constantly shuffling around all over the place, to the point where you're spending a decent amount of time just trying to catch up with him, and then he just swallows you away when you finally do get close to him. I don't want to see monsters like that. However, I do think if they remove that aspect, or at least tone it down a little bit, this guy could absolutely work. The one reason why I'm mentioning that is because this kind of attribute is a lot more dangerous with a thunder monster than it is with like a fire monster. Maybe not as dangerous as with something like poison, because that's the reason why I do not like Ursula. But there you go. Alright, now we have another bird wyvern. We have Forokururu, and there is a bit of an unfortunate thing that this guy has. I think that based on the way that Forokururu fights, I actually do think that it can work, but, like, I don't mean to sound like a broken record here. I actually genuinely think that. But there's one issue. Forokururu cannot be fought anywhere but the flower fields, because his entire moveset and all the debuffs that he can do rely on these flowers to effectively change up what debuff he is able to inflict upon you and how his moves are. I don't think his moveset actually changes, it's just the debuff applied changes with the different kinds of flower nectar that you can get, and there is plenty of those in the flower fields, but they're not really found anywhere else. Now, I do think that Capcom can easily find a way to make it work, but as it stands right now, Forokururu is running the risk of being a monster that is kind of bound to one zone, which isn't really a good thing. It's the reason why Gyrototus didn't really do so well in World. I can't say that Gyrototus is a bad monster, because he's not in World, but he's kind of not great in Rise. But the problem with Gyrototus is the fact that he's just bound to one place, and he's never really fought anywhere else. And that's one of the reasons why Gyrototus was one of the 4 monsters that never was able to go to the Guiding Lands. Even though they somehow made Levasioth work in an arena quest. Like, how do they manage that, but not with Gyrototus? I'm sure they could do something like that. Yeah, I do think that Forokururu is running the risk of kind of being stuck in one place and never really being able to be fought anywhere else, which isn't really what I want. I like when there's, like, arena quests that these monsters can take part in. But it's okay. It doesn't really have to be. It doesn't have to be the most, like, elaborate system that they have to make something work. It's just, if we're gonna, like, if Wilds especially is going to be, and I'm sorry if I'm hard to follow here. I'm just kind of letting my mind run a little bit. If Wilds is going to be, like, specifically based on open world, but there's one monster that you can only fight in very specific places, I can't say that I'm entirely against that, but they're going to have to really try hard to make it interesting if it's going to work. Alright, Garuba Daora. I believe this might be our first burst species on the list, unless you count Diorax as one. Unfortunately, Garuba Daora is F tier. And there's one big problem with him, that is the reason why. One of the attacks that Garuba Daora has, which is also an attack that is used immediately as it even enters the field, is it will roar and emit such a bright light that it instantly makes you faint. It kills you in a single hit. which is not very good. The fact that this attack can kill you in a single hit is not the only problem here. But on top of that, he has the crystal debuff. He also has Wind Aura, just like Kushala Daora does, because this is the burst species of Kushala Daora. And it gets worse. This one attack will hit you from anywhere, except for one location, and that is literally right up against it. There's like a 3 foot, there's like a 3 to 5 foot radius around him where you can rush in, and if you are right up close to him, you will be safe from this attack. Naturally, some people's initial reaction to seeing this guy, if they just want to fight this guy, is to just rush in, and by doing such, they would be able to deal a lot of free hits, and unknowingly, they would be able to avoid his strongest attack. This is actually not a good thing, because they now don't know about this attack, like, unless they watch that video, of course. But if they're going into this fight blind, they would be able to avoid the first attack easily without any issues, but any attempts to avoid any other attacks may come with a lot of pain, because now they don't know how to deal with this, and they ended up just doing something random. They didn't think about it, and there is going to come a point where they're far away from him on the other side of the arena and he does this attack. There's no way that they can get close enough to him to avoid it. There's absolutely no way. They're going to die, and there's nothing that they can do about it. Which is never a good thing when that happens. It's always a bad thing. And it's not even that. This attack is used so frequently throughout the entire fight. He will not wait very long to use it again. He's just gonna keep going over and over and over again until he finally dies. And combine that with like the crystal attacks, which again, crystal debuff, not good. And on top of the potential Wind Aura, and a bunch of other things that he's capable of doing, I don't think a lot of people want to see Garabadora come back. But the big problem here is, of course, the Radiance attack. If that attack is removed or dramatically changed, that could work. However, we can't, I understand we can't exactly bet on that, but this attack really should not be a part of this monster's moveset if it's going to be that easy to die to it, and that hard to be able to figure out what you're supposed to do to it. It's just not going to work. Alright, next up is Gasura Basura, and you can't even see his face. His face kind of got cut off in the image, but it's him. It's the poison fish brute wyvern guy. I'm honestly not sure about Gasura Basura. I think he has a little bit more potential than Diragawa and the other two below to work. Unfortunately, the big problem with Gasura Basura is the fact that his combos are way too fast and hit way too hard. I think the big problem is the fact that he can easily combo, like, getting you stuck in a pitfall trap, he puts poison all over you, and then he, like, tackles you, or sprouts out of the ground. He does something, like, he traps you, he poisons you, and then he kills you, which all happens incredibly fast if you make one small mistake. And this is not something that is a good thing, either. Again, I can't really say anything because I've never fought any of these monsters myself. This is just going off of my limited knowledge of all these guys. However, I do think that this is something that could really run the risk of not working if it is not handled properly. If this is not handled very well, this is just not going to work. But aside from that, I think it's okay. But a lot of changes are going to have to be made. Alright, up next we have Gogomoa. And I don't know. I think I'm gonna put Gogomoa. I think I'm gonna put him up there with Anora Patisu. But I actually think that Gogomoa might actually have better potential to work than Anora Patisu because Gogomoa is a little bit more distinct. It's Gogomoa by himself is a pun on the species spider monkey because he's a monkey that uses actual spider webs. But there's another thing. He has a child on his back, which doesn't seem to really do anything. The child seems to be there only for moral support because it does literally nothing. Now, I can't say that that's a bad thing, but it's just funny as heck. Although I can say that this probably is a bit of a... probably is a little bit of a... I don't know. But I actually do think that Gogamoa can work. But he is going to have to be like slightly toned down so that he doesn't fall into the same trap that Bishaten did. Because Bishaten had a bit of an unfortunate run-in because my experiences with him have been very up and down, especially because he is extremely flaily, which is not really a good thing. He's a monkey, so I kind of understand, but I don't want my monkeys to be super flaily. Alright, so this is our first of 3 pairs of monsters. You can see the 2 Arugaron monsters coming up. I had to have them separately because I couldn't find a good picture that had them both together. But this is Goruganosu and Aruganosu, and they're the 2 giant metal fish. These guys are weird. The way that, okay, so if you look really closely, you can see Ray and Lola Gogarf down here, and you can see, obviously, Nono and Camu Arugaron over here. Goruganosu and Aruganosu absolutely have to be fought together. And this leaves some weird things to be determined logistically for this fight. Firstly, this fight is running the risk of falling into a trap that has honestly plagued Monster Hunter for as long as it has existed, or for as long as this has been an issue. And that trap is having to fight 2 monsters at the same time. It's never usually a good thing to have to fight 2 monsters at once. It's not going to work. But I actually do think that from what I've seen, it kind of works out in these guys' favors. And I do like the idea that they are rivals, so they're not just fighting you; they're also fighting each other to an extent. However, the one thing that is kind of iffy about them, and the reason why I'm actually going to go ahead and just put them in not sure. I'm actually just going to go ahead and put them down there. They're restricted to one place again, which is not usually a thing that I like. But you also are going to have a really hard time slaying them. They kind of share a health bar, but they also kind of don't. And if one of them gets extremely low, then they'll both flee. I do think that there should be a way to be able to deal with them both and be able to slay them both, but not have them just both be repelled at a moment's notice, because at that point, like, we're denying the players the satisfaction of being able to carve a new monster. And like on the first couple of times, that's fine, and that's kind of how they made it work for OD, for like the Cannon Tortoise that I am gonna have to relook at the name at. We'll get to him eventually. However, in this case, I'm not sure how exactly it would work. So the reason why, basically in summary, the reason why I ended up putting Goruganosu and Aruganosu in C tier is because there's a lot of things that need to be determined logistically in order for this to actually work out. Wanzarumu. Do I want him... I'll put him here for now, but he and Arizarion are really close. I think I'm gonna probably keep all 3 of these guys grouped together. Wanzarumu is the Emperor Conqueror Dragon, and it really shows. He has the loudest roar in all of Monster Hunter, and he commands an army of small monsters. Basically, this is the Elder Dragon equivalent of a lot of the great monsters, a lot of the drone monsters. This guy really knows how to be a king, and as such, he's an arena fit for a king. Wanzarumu is just absolutely awesome. The things that this guy can do throughout his, I think, 4-phase fight. Yeah, this guy is absolutely going to rock our world if this guy appears in Wilds. I honestly do think that having like some sort of abandoned tower in Wilds will be a good thing, because then there could be a chance like a really powerful Elder Dragon could be there. If you like enter like high rank or master rank, which would be awesome. I would love to have, like, I don't want to have to repeat myself, but just having just having just any place really where a really powerful Elder Dragon can appear, and Guanzarumu just seems like he would be perfect for the task. And then another funny thing that happens in this fight, before the second half where he eats his small monsters and then powers up because of that, he can actually command the small monsters to line up around the arena when they charge across the arena, and then if you are in their way, they will grab onto you, throw you out of the arena, and it actually counts as a cart. You actually faint from getting tossed out of the arena. There's a few like one-shot attacks that are kind of iffy, like Zenith Kezu literally eats you, Berserk Laviente eats you, but then you have some of the more funny ones like Zenith Blangonga putting you in a snowball and rolling you across the entire zone. And then you have Guanzarumu who literally throws you out. So yeah, I think Guanzarumu is really going to, like Guanzarumu, Decifiora, and Arazarion. If I had to name 3 Elder Dragons that absolutely, for sure, should come back, it's these 3. And we still haven't even gotten into some other Elder Dragons, like you see Inagami is coming up, Haruto Marugu is coming up, and if you look really closely, you can see Ruka Diora down here. There's so many good Elder Dragons that I really want to see appear, but I think these 3 may be close to the top. We will have to see how that goes, but I don't know. There's going to be a lot of high-ranking Elder Dragons, so just be prepared for that. Guria Demosu. This is the origin species. This is our first origin species on this list, and this is the origin species of Rabios. Now, I regret to inform you guys that I still have never actually fought Rabios legitimately. I've fought Basarios countless times. I think I might have fought him once in GU, but I've also fought him plenty of times in Rise. I've never actually fought Gravios, and I think I blame Rise for that because Gravios should have been in Rise and is not. However, I do think that Guria Demosu is a nice little twist on Gravios. Gravios is a fire monster that has a rocky shell. I believe Guria Demosu also has that rocky shell, but he's now a water monster, and he doesn't just have the ability to replace a lot of his attacks with water. He also has the power to rocket himself all the way across as if he is using like the Flood Pack or the Jet Evader, that like the real life Jet Evader or the Flood Pack from Mario Sunshine. That's basically what this guy is. You're fighting like a living rocky Flood Pack, which is kind of an interesting thing, but origin species are a little hard to determine, especially given the fact that Guria Demosu is not one that I really have too much knowledge on. I think I'm going to put him alongside Faranoku, but I can't exactly say that it is the best instance of a species. I do think the other origin species probably do have a little bit more potential. I think Tohotesu Kotora and Yamakurai definitely. I think this guy might be better than Bolzhang. We'll see. But I don't have a whole lot of knowledge on this guy, especially. But I do like the direction that he's actually going in, which just makes it funny. And also he smiles, which, yeah, he smiles anytime he rockets across the zone, which is just funny to see. Alright, Gurren Zaburu. Okay, Gurren Zaburu is hard, because I think this literally is the first monster that appears in the Highlands that has shown up on this list. And now that that has happened, we've got a whole slew of monsters that are going to appear in the Highlands coming very shortly, and a lot of it, again, on the row below. But yeah, this is the first Highlands monster, and the Highlands is interesting because the Highlands is interesting because it actually has a weather mechanic in it. Every monster, once you get to like high rank onwards, every monster has the power to cause a thunderstorm to happen. And doing this, I don't know if it's a power exclusive like the monsters themselves, but the monsters can cause like an actual thunderstorm, and this is where things really get taken to the extreme in the case of a lot of the monsters here because they now have like enhanced movesets. We also have to deal with frequent lightning strikes that just happen naturally. And then there's also a place in the Highlands where there are rock pillars holding up a cave. And if you stand next to that and it gets destroyed, that's an insta-kill. You actually instantly faint if you are standing next to a rock pillar. So that is a little bit on the extreme side, but you can kind of understand how exactly that would work. I do think that Gurren Zaburo actually does have some decent enough potential, but I think I'm going to go ahead and put him alongside Guridamosu and Faranoku. I'm not sure if... I think that's more so like... could be potentially like my lack of knowledge that's determining that. I don't want to say that he's inherently not going to work, but I guess we'll just have to see. Harudo Marugu. Ah, yes, the Liquid Metal Dragon. Yeah, you better believe Harudo Marugu is going to be S tier. I saw Josh and Cotton fight this guy, and I am consistently invested in this fight pretty much the entire time. I'm going to put him just slightly lower than these three because I think these three could work perfectly as a trio of like super ultra late game monsters. Not Duramadeira because Duramadeira needs to be nerfed. But Harudo Marugu, please, I just really want to see Harudo Marugu come back. This guy will be absolutely awesome to fight. Basically, he has armor that is made of like mercury or gallium, and he's able to take that armor and use it against you. Basically, his armor is... basically, the liquid metal is like an extension of his own body that he's able to command in any way that he wants. And he can even, like, he can obviously coat his wings in it so that he can fly. He can coat himself in it so that he turns into a ball that just kind of spins around everywhere. And then Zenith Harudo Marugu actually has an ability where he just pinpoint precision fires like 50 million of these at you, which just hits you over and over again. And then he also has an attack that, like, I think he just jumps really high into the air and then crashes down as a follow-up to that. Obviously, I'm not counting Zenith Harudo Marugu in this case, but oh my god, this guy would absolutely go ham. And a lot of people also love this guy's music as well. I think Rukadiora coming up, I think Rukadiora is the other dragon that I can confidently say has probably one of my favorite themes from Frontier. But I can definitely respect if you love Harudo Marugu as well. So, yeah, that's gonna be pretty awesome. Oh boy. It's Hujikiki. Alright, Hujikiki is in a very interesting place. So, I don't know what's going on next door. I apologize if there's any like background noise that enters. I'll do my best to fix that at some point. But Hujikiki. Oh boy, Hujikiki. Let me make sure I'm still recording actually. Okay, good, I am still recording. Good. Alright, so another Highlands monster, just like Gurren Zaburo. And Hujikiki is one of the monsters that has stuck out to me the most when watching Rage's Frontier series because of one thing. So, what happens when you basically combine like the spikes from Nargacuga with the tornadoes from Barrios? So this guy actually has a vortex-shaped throat, which is why he fires tornadoes. And he basically has a bunch of like hardened quills throughout his body. They're not actually spikes, they're quills, one person said. And he's able to shoot them out like a porcupine can. But it gets worse. When the thunderstorm kicks in, which is the whole second half of the fight, these quills are now electrified, and he is not only able to paralyze you with this, on top of the passive lightning, like throwing tornadoes that have spikes in them that throw out spikes in every direction. They also put huge fields of spikes on the ground. He just shoots them out all over the place. He's somehow able to keep doing that for the whole time. Like, the quest time limit is 50 minutes. How is he able to do that for 50 minutes? But it gets worse. If you get hit by the spikes when the thunderstorm kicks in, you have there are 3 status ailments that this guy can inflict you all at once. He can poison you, he can paralyze you, and he can put you to sleep randomly if you get hit by this. It is almost entirely at random if you get hit by this. I don't think there's any actual indication, but My gosh, that's scary. And he just goes absolutely crazy when the thunderstorm happens. This is probably the monster that most benefits from the thunderstorm, apart from possibly Sword Quest, maybe? I don't know. But Hujikiki goes ham. He goes absolutely ham when the thunderstorm kicks in. So you better believe he's never gonna be messing around. So yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not sure if people are gonna be happy with this, but I kind of want to see this guy come back. I will admit he probably needs to be toned down a little bit, but if he's not, it's going to be so funny. I'm not sure if I would love it or hate it after a while, but either way, that's so funny to me that a monster can crank up its own difficulty to such a high degree. Like, this is the most, this is the most mood whiplashy monster that this game has to offer, and it's really, it's crazy. It is just absolute carnage the entire second half, and in this case, I might actually kind of like it. I'm not sure if anybody agrees with me on this one, but I guess I'll just have to find out later. Inagami, yep. I have been waiting for this moment. Please. Thank you. Please, thank you. Yeah, Inagami. I have been waiting for Inagami pretty much this entire list so far. And I honestly have to say that Inagami is another one that I kind of do want to see. The one thing that I think could be changed to him is that his difficulty probably needs to be raised a little bit because Josh and Cotton kind of decimated it. And Josh was using an Earth-style weapon in that fight. And they fought the hardcore version, blind. They had no idea what was going on. They fought the hardcore Inagami. Cotton was using an Earth-style switch axe, which was new to him, and he had it on Earth-style, and they still decimated it. So I think the difficulty kind of needs to be raised a little bit, but I do think that Inagami is perfect for just one of those very, very passive, very peaceful Elder Dragons that just kind of goes about his day and doesn't really cause that many problems. Another thing that is worth noting is that alongside this guy's the Bamboo Dragon, first of all. I forgot to mention that. But he also has a lot of sleep power, and the sleep actually is very interesting in this case. So, yeah, I would definitely say that. I would definitely say that Inagami should be back, but at the same time, Inagami probably needs to be made a little tougher, in my opinion, because you shouldn't really be able to destroy an Elder Dragon like that. Alright, Camus and Nono Arugaron. I almost said Odogaron. Thanks, Josh. Thankfully I didn't. Another duel of monsters, and I think this one probably... I think I'm going to go ahead and put them both... I'm going to go ahead and move them both up right now, because, again, I couldn't find them separately. Or I couldn't find them both together, so I had to do them separately, but that I'm just going to keep them together. Yeah, I would have to say Camus and Nono Arugaron definitely have potential to work, but my issue is that I've never seen a fight with Camus, so for all that I know, they could have pretty much the exact same moveset as each other, and when you first see them, they're both together, but then the one that you are not fighting on that quest jumps away, and then the only time that you see them come back is when you've slain or captured the other one. So, I'm not sure exactly how that one will work. Again, just like Gorgonosu and Argonosu, there's a lot of logistics that have to be determined in order for this to work. So, this one could be a little tougher. Yes, Q Ouroboros. Okay, so I actually rewatched that episode very shortly before I made this video because Q Ouroboros, I was completely drawing a blank. I had completely forgotten everything about this monster, but after rewatching some of that episode, it's all coming back to me now. And I don't want to do this. Q Ouroboros is in a bit of a tough spot. I'm gonna put him in D2. I don't want to do it, but Kyoaraburu seems like he would function best as like a siege monster, but at the same time, I also feel like this would be... Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm really not sure. I do think him being a siege monster would be nice, but making this harder is the fact that siege monsters have kind of been hit and miss, especially in World. I think I'm willing to bet that people really love Call of Taroth, and they also really love Sappy Diva, but I have not heard very good things about Behemoth, and I have a feeling that Kyoaraburu could potentially fall into the trap of being just like Behemoth if he's not careful. And the reason why I say that is because he has an attack that is basically the opposite of Garubadara, where it will deal massive damage to you, and it doesn't even actually hit you, it just rapidly drains your health if you're standing next to him while he's roaring. So it's basically the same as Garubadara, except you now have to get as far away as you possibly can get from him, and even then you still might die. I don't know exactly how it works, because again, I've never fought this guy, but there's another issue. This guy only appeared in the fortress as kind of like we have to kill this guy before he invades our town and destroys it. One of those guys, just like Haruto Murugu, Revidiora, Rukadiora, whatever. But unfortunately, what made this so difficult is the fact that you have such a strict time limit. And it's not even a time limit that, they really inherently show. Here, I want to see if I can pull that up. So I just pulled up that video real quick just to review. That video showed a 30-minute time limit. It did not take 30 minutes for them to fail the quest. And they only fainted twice. I don't know what was going on in that video exactly, but it was not good in this case. And if Kyoaraburu basically has a hidden time limit, that's bad. That could really backfire on the monster's part. And again, I might be completely wrong on this because I don't know too much about Kyoaraburu, but that just seems like something that really should not be the case. Quarusapusu, I think I'm going to put Quarusapusu in A tier, alongside Gogomoa and Norpatisu. I'm going to put him alongside Barlagwal. I really like Quarusapusu, actually. He uses a lot of light, so he does have a lot of flash attacks. He's also a Leviathan. You really can't go wrong with a lot of Leviathans. Leviathans are just so consistently good in the series, it's hard not to like them. Yeah, there's really not much I can ultimately say about Quarusapusu. I just think that he really would work, and I honestly do want to see what he's like. Isn't Barlagwal a Leviathan as well? I think he is. But yeah. Alright. Here we go. Laviente. Laviente is between A and B tier, but I don't know where. Because Laviente is a siege monster balanced for 16 people whose fight is split up across 9 segments. And logistically, that would be so difficult. I really am not sure where exactly I would rank this. So, where exactly should I put this? I think I'm going to put Laviente at the top of... It's either top of B tier or bottom of A tier for me. I think I'm going to put him at the top of B tier because some changes do need to be made in order for this to work out. Because Laviente just has so many logistically complicated things. We're going to really need to work around that in order to make this actually viable for the main series. I'm not against it, and I do have full confidence that Capcom can make it work. But even then, we have to have the right setting for this, and I don't know if Wilds is going to be the right setting for this. So, if Laviente ever does get brought back, it's probably not going to happen for a while. Alright, Mariganasu. Mariganasu is the first species of Espinas, and is a darkness element monster, and I think Mariganasu is top of A tier for me. I think this could be the case. Mariganasu, obviously the darkness element is a combination of 2 elements, just like a light element. Darkness is a combination of dragon and ice, so if you took both elements that Norpatisu has, you put them, you merge them together, you get Mariganasu, and that's basically it. So, yeah, I can definitely say Mariganasu, and also I do like the fact that Mariganasu is another blind cave dweller. I don't think Barlagwal is blind. Mariganasu is definitely blind. Like, we've seen how big his ears are. But yes, I absolutely think that. And also, at the end of this list, we have like Zerarusu. I do think that actually, alongside Zerarusu, Mariganasu absolutely would go perfectly. In fact, if a turf war between Mariganasu and Zerarusu happened, it would be like the Ivory Legiacris Ebony Odogaron turf war that everyone so desperately wants. Alright, up next we have Miru. So, Miru is a little bit difficult to determine because Miru also changes form throughout the fight. And when it changes form, it also changes its fighting style. I'm actually going to go ahead and put it in B tier alongside, you know, I guess right there is fine. I'm not really entirely sure. Like, there's one special form where he focuses on speed, one where he focuses on power. I thought about this for a little bit, and I can confirm Miru is the harder, better, faster, stronger monster. That's just how I see it. And I can't say I really complain. That song is really good, by the way. But yes, I can definitely confirm that Miru can work, but once again, logistically would need some planning. All right, this is Midogaron. Just like Nono and Camu Arugaron, Midogaron is kind of the same, and Midogaron is S tier. I'm actually going to go ahead and put Midogaron up there with the Elder Dragons because I really do think that Midogaron has massive potential to make it into a series like this, especially with Lunagaron. One thing that I kind of committed a bit of an oopsie on when I was kind of designing my own large monsters, I made a fire-based Fanged Wyvern, not realizing at the time that I basically just accidentally redesigned Midogaron, so I kind of have to redo that now. But Midogaron just seems like it would be the perfect foil alongside Lunagaron, because Lunagaron is an ice-based Fanged Wyvern, Midogaron is fire. And another thing is that Midogaron kind of focuses a little bit more on speed and literal teleportation, while Lunagaron focuses on its brute strength and its defense. So Midogaron just seems like the perfect foil, and another turf war between Midogaron and Lunagaron would just be absolutely perfect. I so desperately want to see this guy come back. Alright, Odibatarasu, the predator to Akurabashimu, and another monster that unfortunately is going to go in C tier because I'm really not sure exactly how well this would work. Odibatarasu kind of is in the same boat as Gorgonos and Argonosu. You don't fight two monsters at once, but it's very difficult to get a slay on him the first time, because I believe the first time you fought him in Frontier, you just repel him. But he also has a lot of attacks that cover a huge amount of land. And I actually, you know what? I'm going to raise him up one tier. He's going to be at the bottom of B tier, just kind of going forward. Because I did just realize that this guy kind of is the in-between between a Cantor and Eucanlos. I have never fought a Cantor and Eucanlos before, but Odibatarasu is kind of like the halfway point in between. The Cantor is for the hot regions, Eucanlos is for the cold regions. The desert is both, and that's where Odibatarasu is. I don't necessarily agree with the idea of him making a huge rupture through the sand that one-shots you if you're anywhere near him when he roars and don't have earplugs, because you're going to need some really powerful earplugs for this. But yeah, I can definitely understand like why Odibatarasu actually kind of would do somewhat okay in the context of this game. However, I do think that some changes are going to have to be made. One, to kind of distinguish him from a Cantor and Eucanlos, but also just to balance him out a little bit so that he's not completely ridiculous and kills you instantly every time, because that's just no fun for anyone. Alright, I have been kind of excited for this guy. Hariapuria is going to go up there with Mariganasu and Barlagwal. Hariapuria is the puzzle monster. And as someone who is kind of who kind of has an avid puzzle collection at this point, and you guys following me actually would know this, because that's one of the other things I do on my channel is a lot of cubing stuff. You guys would know that I love puzzles, but Paria Puria is a puzzle in a very different way. There's actually a neat little twist with Paria Puria. When you open the supply box, you're not given the standard stuff. Instead, you're given a bunch of shanks of raw meat, but not just raw meat, you also get poisoned meat, drugged meat, and tinged meat. And Paria Puria actually has different colored drool that he will randomly switch between throughout the fight. And if you feed him the color of meat that matches the color of his drool, which is gross, then what will end up happening is eventually he will get so full that he actually just stops attacking entirely and just kind of walks it off. And that allows you to get in a lot of free hits. Now, this is not something that you're like actually bound to do, but yeah, I definitely do think that Paria Puria is definitely worthy of being all the way up there. I didn't want to just gift him S tier because, like I said, I just don't want to give S tier. But I actually do think that Paria Puria really does seem like something that will really work in the context of this game. Alright, up next we have Poboru Barumu, I believe is his name. Oh my gosh, that's hard to say. I'm going to actually go ahead and put this one in A tier as well, just under Barakurosu. This is the Hunting Horn monster. You guys know how much Cotton loves this monster because it's the Hunting Horn, and it also literally buffs itself. But it also buffs you. It also heals you, which is very nice of it. And it's also a little terrifying, and it's a Highlands monster, so it's extra terrifying. There's a lot of good things to say about Poborumarumu, but it also has attacks that just randomly make you dance. It's not even a stun, it just randomly makes it just makes you do a random gesture, which is just the best way of handling everything. I can't say that I disapprove of this, but I'm not going to give it S tier because I've said it many times. I don't want to just give out S tier. Alright, we're getting down to the last row here, and we're starting things off with Pokaradon, which is going to go in B tier. I'm going to put him alongside... I'm going to put him alongside that. I can't say that Pokaradon is necessarily at risk of anything bad. However, I also do think that Pokaradon is in a bit of an awkward spot when he has so much health. Literally, Josh and Cotton fought this guy in starter G-rank equipment, and they almost timed out. They didn't even finish the fight, they triple carded, but they thought that they timed out because it literally took them almost the entire time to even get him to, like, limp away. And then they switched back to high rank gear, and it took them 10 minutes, which... But yeah, really nothing crazy going on with this guy, but his health needs to be reduced. I do like the idea of, I believe this guy is actually a Leviathan, either that or a Fanged Beast. I would understand if that was the case. But like I said, his health needs to be scaled down a lot. Alright, next up we have Ray and Lolo Gogarth, and I'm going to put them alongside... Yeah, I think I'm actually going to go ahead and just put them alongside Camu and Nono Arugaron, because in my eyes, Ray and Lolo are very similar. You know what? I'm gonna put them higher. Yeah, I actually think that they could potentially work a little bit better than Camu and Nono, but they do probably need a little bit of... Like, they probably do need a little bit of a change just so that they actually can work. I'm not saying that this is inherently their fault, but once again, fighting two monsters at once. But this time it's two monsters that are actually complementary to each other in an appropriate way because they are magnet monkeys. If we're considering that these guys are like magnet monkeys and you actually do fight these guys if you're going to unlock the magnet spike, I'm not sure how they would work in the main series, but you can kind of understand it, I guess. It's just hard to fight. It's just hard to like classify two monsters at once, especially when you have to fight them at once because there's always that risk of it falling into that trap of just having to fight two monsters at once and it's not enjoyable. Alright, so we're on to Rukodiora, and yeah. Rukodiora is is up there. I think I can safely say that Rookadora has like two groups of not Rookadora. That Frontier has like two big groups of Elder Dragons that I actually can consider to be kind of similar to each other. Obviously, Inagami is kind of the outlier in all this, and I think Gwanzarumu also may be a bit of an outlier. But I think Rookadiora, Haruto Maruto, and Inagami can be kind of like, I mean, obviously they're not exactly the same, but they can kind of be similar to the Kushala Daora, Teostra, Valhazak trio in World. And then Gwanzarumu, Arizarion, and Deciphiora can be like the ultra endgame. This is I don't want to say like Sappy Jiva is a part of this, but I guess I can kind of give a little bit of an analogy. Maybe some people will understand. But this is like the Sappy Jiva Elatrion Fatalis portion. Rookadiora, on the other hand, Rookadiora is going to be perfect for the series. Like, we have pretty much everything that we need in order to make Rookadiora work, and I just so desperately want him to work because his music is so good, and it has not been in the main series. I can't even find his theme on Spotify, which is a shame, but I so desperately want to see Rookadiora come back in the main series because I think this guy would work perfectly as like a counterpart to Kushala Daora, better than Garuba Daora ever would be able to. Rookadiora is the Magnet Dragon. We have the Bamboo Dragon, the Liquid Metal Dragon, and now the Magnet Dragon. And Rookadiora will Rookadiora is so, he has so much potential to appear in a series like this, and it's for very good reasons. Because what he's able to do is he can magnetize himself to get a little bit of an aura around him in order to make rocks orbit around him. He can also inflict you with a magnetic debuff in order for him to either pull you in closer to him or even repel you away from him. There's so many different ways that he's able to use magnetism, and it's all done in very, very clever and well executed ways, to the point where it's really hard to deny that this guy really should appear in a main series game at some point. I would so love to see Rookadiora appear in Wilds. The reason why I'm not going to rank him any higher than these three up here is because I think these three actually do have better potential, and these three actually have more potential and can probably work out a little bit better because they're like ultra endgame monsters, and I bet a lot of more people probably would want these three to be up here. But these three work well as like pre-master rank monsters. Like if you were to fight these three in high rank before you got to master rank, and then you get to like ultra late game master rank and you fight these three, that'll be just about perfect. I think this is actually a really good lineup of Elder Dragons for a future Monster Hunter game. Obviously, it's very unlikely that all 6 of these are going to appear in Wilds. I'm willing to bet probably not even one could appear in Wilds. We could just get entirely new ones. But if we do get anyone, if we get any one of these three, I want it to be Rookadiora. If we get any one of these three, these Arizarion or Gwanzarumu, yeah, I just can't deny that Rookadiora will absolutely shake things up in the best way possible, because a lot of people are really annoyed with Kushala Daora in the world. Rookadiora may be the same thing, but it also might be able to execute that just a little bit better. Alright, up next we have Shantian. And Shantian is a bit harder to rank. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put Shantian in... I'm going to put it in B tier, alongside Labiente. I'm not sure if that's really deserved for Shantian to be there. However, I do think that it is a little bit difficult for Shantian to really be determined compared to a lot of the others. And the reason why I say that is because Shantian kind of copies a lot of what Amatsu is able to do. But also Shantian's fight has so many phases. Like, Shantian starts off on the ship, then kicks up a storm and flies away from the ship, really back onto the ship, and then it crashes the ship into a volcanic area, then infuses with the fire, and then its death animation is it literally just exudes so much energy that it just fries itself. So, yeah, it's a little bit difficult to determine, but I actually do think that Shantian is... they do have some potential to make it in, but not nearly as much as the other 6 Elder Dragons right here. He has better potential to make it in than Dura Madeira and Kiara Boru, but not nearly as much as these 6. These 6 just are like that's sextuple goodness right there. When it comes to like these 6 monsters, it just works out really well. Also, it's probably gonna stay this way for these 6. There may be a little separation, but I'm not sure. Alright, Tycoon Zamuza, one of the introductory monsters into Monster Hunter Frontier. You are going to go in A tier. I am not a big fan of the Carapaceans in Monster Hunter, I can very comfortably say that. But I actually do have a little bit of respect for Tycoon Zamuza, because Tycoon Zamuza has several phases to his fight. Well, and by several, I really mean kind of 2 big phases. He starts off, as you can see, covered in this mud armor, but you can also very, very closely see the orange shell underneath. That's another false shell. He actually has 2 false shells on him, and if you're able to break the second shell before you kill him, then you actually start a secret final phase where he cranks everything up in a similar way that Huchikiki can do, and he just goes absolutely crazy. And he now becomes an electric monster. So yeah, I believe that Tycoon Zamuza absolutely would do really well, especially because he's an introductory monster in Frontier, or I guess one of the introductory monsters. You can definitely see that there's a lot to like about this guy, and he would actually kind of work really well in the main series. He might stand out, but in this case, he actually would stand out in a good way. All right, Toa Tesukatora. Finally, another origin species, and I actually am going to go ahead and put him in A tier. I don't know why it's bouncing around like that. Yeah, Toa Tesukatora can really, I think Toa Tesukatora really does have some good potential in the main series, and there's a lot to like about it, considering it's where both Teostra and Lunastra came from, but it's also ice. It's basically Ice Teostra Lunastra, which is very interesting to me, because you kind of get into that mindset of, you're like, oh, this is Teostra, so I'll be able to do this easily because I've fought them a bunch of times before. It's really not. That's kind of the mistake that I made with Lunastra, and oh my, what a mistake to make. Yeah, that was not too fun. But yeah, I actually do think that Toa Tesukatora has some decent enough potential to work. And you know what? While we're here, I'm actually going to go ahead and really quickly move Mariganasu up to S tier, because Zerarusu's up last on this list, and there's a good chance that Zerarusu could be making S tier. Now, as for, oh my gosh, we actually got a streak of good ones here. Torridcless. Yeah, I can very comfortably say that Torridcless is, you know what, I'm actually going to go ahead and put Torridcless at the top of A tier instead of Mariganasu. Torridcless is a big thunderbird, and it is honestly kind of gorgeous. Torridcless is one of the more beautiful monsters in the series, and it really does show. Yeah, it's very easy to see how Torridcless could do so well. However, some things do need to be toned down with it. I think it's easy to understand that the experience is very comparable between Josh and Cotton, when Josh was kind of having a good time and Cotton was not having a good time with this monster. And then, don't even get me started on Zenith Torridcless, because we're not talking about that one. However, I can say that Torridcless is something that honestly really would work out in the main series, because, well, I mean, not only is it beautiful and would really, honestly, I bet a lot of people would like to see Torridcless, just because he's very gorgeous, but yeah, that's not the only reason why. Yeah, I think a lot of people would probably like to see the armor as well, but I think as for Torridcless as a fight, yeah, I think he does things really well. I think the combination of Flash plus like the combination of using flash attacks as well as thunder attacks is interesting to me, but at the same time it's also something that can come with a little bit of risk if it is not used properly. So I think it has potential, but it needs to be slightly toned down a little bit. Alright, next up is one of the more infamous monsters in Frontier. We have Unknown, the black and red Rathian, and Unknown is going to be S tier. If I can grab onto her. Now that just begs the question, where do I want to actually rank her? Do I want to put her in between the trios of Elder Dragons, or do I want to put her just below it? Because she's not going to be the highest up on this list. Arazarion's probably going to stay there. I think I'm going to put Unknown in between. I think I can justify that. Unknown is the Rathian that has 1,000 levels of just getting progressively angrier and angrier as the fight goes on, and it will constantly, like as the fight goes on, it's only going to get worse. And I think that makes this fight honestly a perfect candidate because like this can use Blast. Like she can easily use Blast. She's got very powerful fire attacks. Combine fire with Blast. You can also combine, like, she also apparently has defense down for some reason, which is very strange. But yeah, you can definitely say that Unknown will absolutely, like, just like with who did I say would do it? Just like with, what was it, Haruto Marugu? I said that would be the case. Yeah, Unknown will absolutely shake things up a little bit, and I think it's probably, you know what, Unknown may also function well as like either a transition into high rank, or maybe like an invader style monster. Like Unknown can either function as one of those two, and that honestly would really work out really well. I would actually really like it if Unknown was kind of like the transition from low rank to high rank, because Unknown is one of the last monsters you fight in high rank in Frontier. It's one of the last monsters you have to fight before you can earn the right to take on G rank quests. So yeah, Unknown definitely has a lot of potential there. Oh boy, Varusa Borusu. Yikes. Okay, so Burst Diablos, I think that's not a bad idea by itself. There's just one problem, and that is the game of Keep Away. When you are fighting this monster, every so often a cactus will appear with a glowing fruit on top. You have to gather that fruit, which takes time, and you have to run away while you have this fruit in your hands. And to make matters even worse, you have to do this. You have to do this while your health is constantly being drained. And if he hits you, he will take the cactus from you and eat it. And if he eats the cactus, he goes ballistic. But the cactus, like, the fact that the cactus hurts you, even though you're supposed to hold on to it and keep it away from him, that pushes him over the edge for me. I can't say that I would really want to see Varusa Borusu come back, because having, like, the game of Keep Away is not necessarily a bad mechanic, and I kind of like it. But the fact that the cactus hurts you and you kind of have to have other teammates with you in order for this to even be viable, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work compared to, like, compare this to others, it's just not going to work. I can't say that it's going to be the best idea in the world to bring in a game of Keep Away with something that damages you, because I guarantee you a lot of people are going to have Lunastra flashbacks, like I am right now. And same deal with Vol'jang. I honestly think that Vol'jang desperately needs to be toned down if he's going to work out. I'm not entirely against Vol'jang, because I actually think Vol'jang can really work out, but Vol'jang desperately needs to be, like, toned down if he's going to work. Rajang by himself in World is already a ridiculous fight, but Vol'jang is going to be ridiculous square. It's just going to be, it might even just be considered too much. Like, this might be one of the most overwhelming fights, and a lot of people are probably just going to end up throwing in the towel with this guy. So, yeah, this is Origin Rajang, by the way. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, this guy is probably just too much. Alright, Yamakurai. People are probably going to hate me for this, but Yamakurai is one that I really can never put my finger down. I think I'm just going to put it in C tier, but it's not like Yamakurai's fault, it's really just my lack of knowledge about Yamakurai, because, like, compared to, like, the Elder Dragons up here in S tier, and compared to the other origin species, I just don't know. I really just can't figure out for the life of me how I would make Yamakurai. But maybe this is just my lack of... I think I'm just going to leave this up to my lack of knowledge, because I don't know much about Yamasukami or Yamakurai for that matter, because I know this guy is the origin species to Yamasukami. And from what I hear, like, he apparently goes through the seasons as well. And he also, like, makes tornadoes. You can't parry a tree, as Josh found out. And you also have to hit back thunderbugs in order to knock them out of the sky, which is interesting enough to me, but I would honestly have to experience it for myself before I can really determine how much potential it has. It's one of those that I can't really go off of just, like, looking at somebody else, so I think for that reason I'm just going to leave it at the top of C tier, but I can understand that if you guys were doing the same list, you guys would put it, like, high up in S tier. I can easily understand that. Alright, we got 2 monsters left, and we are starting off with Zenasurisu, and I'm gonna be honest, Zenasurisu is kind of a monster that we really desperately need to see, because one of the monsters that come on, man. Here, I'll go ahead and do that. There we go, that works. And I think the reason why is because we do not actually have a water-based flying wyvern in the series. I actually was planning on designing my own that would kind of operate very similar to Zenasurisu. It's not going to be exactly like Zenasurisu. It's something that I've had for a little while. I just need to actually put it to paper. But I do think that Zenasurisu actually is unique as a water wyvern in his own ways. And for good reason. Zenasurisu, first of all, has 3 sever part breaks, which is interesting. No monster actually can have things sever that much. Barroth comes close because he has like 2 extra parts that you can have if you break his scalp and sever his tail. This guy has both of the tendrils on his wings can be cut off, as well as his tail. So this guy has 3 severable parts, which is very interesting. But he also uses them in very good ways. So if you actually do sever these parts off, it actually really nerfs him, because he uses these tendrils to kind of tear through the ground, which also sends waves everywhere. The tendrils also provide a little bit of range to his wing attacks. He does a lot of good things with this, and I can absolutely I can really understand like how good that this guy could be if he was in the main series. And also he starts off the fight just by drinking water. Like when you see him, he's just actually drinking water. He's just a thirsty boy. He needs hydration, so yeah. It's good in that regard. Alright. Last up, monster that I have highly anticipated for the entire list. We have Zerurusu. And I'm gonna have to do this twice. And I am gonna go ahead and put him right there, up in S tier, in between Inagami and Midokon. Yeah. Zerurusu, being the sort of counterpart to Mariganasu, this is the birth species of Rathalos. You guys should know how much I love Rathalos, and believe you me, he goes absolutely crazy. This is the light element monster, and the light element, much like the dark element being a combination, the light element itself is also a combination. This time it is between the thunder and fire elements, so it will drain your health while making it easier to be stunned, which is honestly, some might see that as a bit overkill, but I'm gonna be honest, I can definitely understand that, especially if you can just roll to get it off. That'd be good. And also, a little bonus. When I watched that episode, Zerurusu gave Josh an excuse to put Sandstorm in the video, which that was the play right there. But yes, I can absolutely say that Zerurusu is deserving of S tier for me. I just love Zerurusu a lot, even though I've never had a chance to fight him. I would love to see this guy come back in some form or another. I just like this guy too much. Maybe I just like Rathalos itself too much, but you know what? He's not the only monster that I like. I do like some others, but yeah, definitely Zerarusu is. If we get Zerarusu, we kind of have to get Mariganasu, and if we get Mariganasu, we kind of have to get Zerarusu. There's not really any way that we can work around that, because we have the Frontier flagship and the main series flagship together, and now they're in their burst species forms. So yeah, that's about all that can be determined. But the way that this guy uses light is also incredibly, like, fun. He has large beams. I believe he just has energy balls and stuff like that. I don't remember everything exactly. The main thing I remember is just Josh running all the way back up here when he fell off the tower and then used the Farcaster, because he thought the Farcaster would bring him back up the top. Nope, it didn't. But yeah, that is pretty much it for my tier list. That was 40, like, it's technically 48 monsters because the Gogarths and the Rugorons, they had to be separated because I could not get them together. However, it is about 46 monsters ranked, and of those 46, we ended up with 12 in S tier, which I think is honestly pretty good. And I can't say that I'm really upset with this list at all. I think these 3 Elder Dragons up here, just kind of taking over the top spots, I think that was a really, I think that is probably about how I feel. I'm happy with Unknown being in the middle, and then another group of 3 Elders underneath, and then probably the 5 monsters that I think are most deserving of being in the main series. A tier I'm also very happy with. I don't think I'm going to reorganize it at all. But then everything else below A tier, so B through F tier, I think that one's more up for interpretation, but that's just how I put it, and I think I'm honestly pretty happy with this list, so hopefully you guys are also happy with this list. So if you enjoyed this, then please be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more from me in the future, then please consider hitting that subscribe button. I will most definitely be doing more tier lists in the future, as well as more actual countdowns, because I've had one that I should have been working on for a while and never had a chance to, but now hopefully I am able to make something work out for that. Yeah, if you have any comments to make about this tier list, like if you would rearrange something differently, then please be sure to let me know in a nice way in the comments below. I wasn't nearly as blunt this time because I really can't be, but I'm also not talking about the bowguns, so thank goodness for that. But yeah, if you have a difference of opinion, just let me know nicely in the comments below. Please don't be mean about it. But with all of that said, that will be it for me for this video. I will see you next time. Farewell.